Hello learners, welcome once again to this episode where we are dealing with an introductory to NGO management, and in today's session we would be going through and looking forward about communication skills, and we would be covering the reading skills, which are very important in an NGO management, the writing skills and the soft skills. To begin with, we'll start off with the reading skills. Now, reading skill, it is the ability to get meaning from written symbols and evaluate their accuracy and validity. Every day, a business executive reads various documents relating to employment, benefits, financial and legal matters, and he has to follow the company's policies and procedures which are available to him only in writing. He has to daily conduct business transactions through letters, memos and reports, and which is a very clear fact that in an NGO management head has to do the business transactions through letters, memos and reports. Reading is a major mode through which we can continue learning and making himself or herself more valuable to the organization. And reading is one of the most important modes through which you can continue your learning. Further moving to reading is the most important skill for the learners of English as a second language. It is a receptive skill but requires active participation from the learner. We read anything for two purposes, either for the pleasure or for information. When we read for pleasure, then pleasure becomes primary purpose and getting information is secondary. Hence, we read extensively, however. When we read for information, we read intensively. Now, remember two things, extensive reading and intensive reading. Reading, as defined by some of the thinkers and theorists, are thinking under the stimulus of the printed page. Goldman views reading as a psycho-linguistic guessing game. Reading is a process of decoding the encoded message. An encoder, writer, sends the message, decoder, and the reader reads it. This decoding is meaningless if without any comprehension. Reading is a meaning-making process. We must remember two important principles of comprehension. Text is not the sole repository of meaning, and the reader is not a passive receiver of information. Linguistic knowledge is necessary but not the sufficient condition to understand the meaning. The reader has to actively get involved in the process of reading. To comprehend the text accurately, he requires linguistic knowledge, extra-linguistic knowledge, and product approach and process approach. For a linguist, to get extra knowledge and to comprehend the text accurately, he has to have linguistic knowledge, extra-linguistic knowledge, product approach, and process approach. Now, what is linguistic knowledge? Linguistic features are letters, sounds, words, and structures. Remember, linguist features are always the letters, the sounds, the words, and the structures. And extra-linguistic knowledge would be the extra-linguistic features are the socio-linguistic aspects of culture, registers, dialects, idiom, situations, etc. Reading involves both these approaches, the product approach and the process approach. As a product, it results in comprehension. The product perspective refers to the information the learner has derived while interacting with the text. Product approach is when the product perspective refers to the information the learner has derived while interacting with the text. Process approach. As a process, the reader reconstructs the message in the text by an active and dynamic interaction. This involves constant revision and reinforcement of information. When a reader reads something, she or he understands at three levels, which are reading the lines, reading between the lines, and reading beyond the lines. And lastly, we have the bottom approach and the top-down approach. Now we'll come to reading the lines, reading between the lines, and reading beyond the lines. The process of reconstructing the world demands a fine-tuning between the writer and the reader. The writer and the reader's worldview should match. This justifies the statement that the linguistic knowledge in itself is not enough. One has to have the appropriate knowledge of the world as well. While reading, a reader interacts with the text, decodes it, and constructs meaning in the process. When she or he constructs depends not only on what the writer has to say, but also on what she or he as a reader brings to the text. Hence, reading is aptly called as a psycholinguistic guessing game. So when a reader reads something, she or he understands at three levels, which are reading the lines, reading between the lines, and reading beyond the lines. Reading the lines. The reader responds literally to the graph signals only with little depth of understanding. That is known as reading the lines. Reading between the lines. Here, the reader recognizes the writer's meaning. Reading beyond the lines, the reader's own personal experiences and judgment influence his response to the text. This mental representation of the text is a combination of the information in the text itself and its interpretation in terms of reader's knowledge. And that is known as, and this would involve the bottom-up approach and top-down approach. Bottom-up approach would be going from text meaning, and top-down approach from going from context to meaning. Remember two things, bottom-up approach and top-down approach. Bottom-up approach is going from text meaning, and top-down approach would be going from context to meaning. What are the techniques of reading? Very importantly, when an NGO manager reads a memo or reads a report, or reads an application, or reads a memorandum, or reads a letter, or answer to one of the queries raised and all, what are the techniques which he or she should involve? And they are the survey, the question, the read, the recite, and the review. What is survey? Survey is known as to get an idea of what the chapter is about by reviewing the highlights. That is, reading the title, headlines, and subheadings. Second, taking note of words that are italicized or bold. Third, look at the charts, graphs, pictures, maps, and other visual material. Fourth, read captions. And fifth, read the meaning and end of the chapter. Survey. The next technique of reading would be question. As you survey the text, ask a question for each section. Ask what, why, how, when, who, and where questions as they relate to context. How? Here is how you can create questions and all. Turn the title, headings, and subheadings into questions. Rewrite the questions at the end of the chapter, and after each subheading in your own words, write down your questions. Questions help you pay attention, understand the text better, and recall the information more easily later on. Then reading. Reading is read one section of the chapter at a time, actively looking for an answer to a question for that section. Pay attention to bold and italicized texts the author uses to make important points, and be sure to review everything in this section, including tables, graphs, illustrations, as these features can communicate an idea more powerfully than written text. Now, coming to the last two techniques of reading, that would be reciting and reviewing. Reciting is after each section, stop, think, and find out if you remember what was read. Review is once you have finalized, go back to the whole chapter. Now, when you are an active reader, you have to consider the author's purpose for writing. Anticipate the possible message from content, use of prior knowledge in evaluating what is being read. Executive reading. When it comes to executive reading, it is divided into two parts: the reading matter and how to read it. So when it's a routine letter, leave application, normal representation, routine reports, block sections, you have to read it by skimming and skipping judiciously. Reading for speeches, one needs to read aloud and practice. Reading for report writings to clients, one needs to read, pick, rearrange around them, then take notes. Catalogs, price lists, circulars, annual reports, association activities, market conditions, bills and vouchers. One need to skip and read related portion carefully. Instruction of consequence, one needs to read, mark, learn and digest. Relaxation, pleasure, needs to read fast, take notes and criticize. Calculations and formula, one needs to summarize and discuss. General knowledge and awareness, one needs to work out. Textbooks and treatise, one needs to read fast. And report revisions, look for key positions and key ideas. Literature on alternatives, compare with previous knowledge. Literature on entirely new product, machine, equipment or process, one needs to have prior preparation. Statutory matters, note highlights. Negotiations, discuss with others after reading. Techniques for improving retention. It's not just you read an ocean of theories, but nothing you memorize or retain with yourself. Now, what are the techniques of improving retention? Retention is something you keep to yourself, or you retain what you have read for use and all. So, for improving what you have read and how to retain, you have to use the memory aids. You have to decide priorities of retention, thinking, reinforcing and enduring determination. Using memory aids like acronyms and abbreviations can be used as effective devices for improving retention. Okay. The best example could be the 4 P's of marketing, where you have product, price, place and promotion. SWOT analysis and strategic management refers to strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. And the 7 C's of good business letter would be good business letter writings are clearness, courtesy, completeness, correctness, concreteness, consciousness and coherence. Deciding priorities of retention is the second technique to retain. Human mind has the capacity to retain vast amount of information. At the same time, it is difficult to recall the information from various layers of access. Hence, the closer to the surface that information lies, the earlier and easier it is to recall. The reader should decide his priorities of retention instead of retaining irrelevant information in his mind. He should store and concentrate only on priority areas. The third technique is thinking. If the reader wants to retain reading material, he must think about it. If one applies one's mind about the significance of reading material, its relationship with one's knowledge, its utility for future reference, then it will be automatically contribute to his retention. Now, coming on to the fourth technique of retention, it is reinforcing. Reinforcement improves retention ability, and the few tips for reinforcement are: brief notes are to be prepared and periodical review of such notes is done. After reading, the speaker should talk about it to someone. And for improving the quality of repetitive input, the materials read are to be supplemented by audio visuals, lectures and discussions. And the fourth one, this information is to be related with other material. In other words, the read material should not be considered as an end only. And the last one would be enduring determination. A final set of procedures for retention involves the commitment to retain knowledge. While reading, an individual may get a lot of information, he will keep only the piece of information which he intends to retain. If an individual does not have the will to retain, retention is not possible. Now, what happens in an NGO management is the employees or the manager, the team leaders and all, they at times have to rework on their writing skills and all. And why, the reasons for written effective business communication for any of the employees attached to an NGO is that the employee adds value to the organization for which one is working with, and it will enhance one greatly, which often means rapid progress upon the promotion ladder. Now, competent writers are not as plentiful as you might imagine, and those who write well stand out from the rest. Those who can compose effective business letters make new friends and keep old ones for the organization, thereby increasing sales and profits, which all business need for survival. So it is very, very important that written communication has to be very, very efficient and effective. Good writers can save a great deal of time, effort and money from an organization. People who write long and gravel messages that confuse their readers waste millions of dollars each year. Now, moving on to the yet important and very important aspect of communication and in an NGO, the soft skill business communication. Theodore Roosevelt has said, "The average man who is successful is not a genius. He is a man who has merely ordinary qualities but who has developed those ordinary qualities to a more than ordinary degree." Soft skills in business communication. A professional must have knowledge, that is, his technical or domain knowledge, skills, competency in putting that knowledge into effect, and attitude, which means proper disposition towards issues which crop up during the complicated process of managing a business. Now, if you ask, in this competitive market and where there is a win-win situation, there is a cutthroat competition, whom would you define or identify as a wisdom worker? Wisdom worker is one who treats work as worship and management as sadhana. Number two, he seeks to balance his outgoing tendency with harmonious inward journey. Number three, the scriptures teach him to be selfless and all his senses, body, mind and intellect are concentrated in the Atman. He does not treat any work as lowly or menial. He treats work as a means of purifying minds and egos. He lays emphasis on duties towards the society rather than on his rights as an individual. Number six would be, for him or her, the means to an end is important as the end itself. Number seven, he tends to evolve into an integrated personality, helping his group, colleagues, subordinates, organization, and finally the society. Number eight, he remains calm both in victory and defeat and in praise and reproof. The wisdom worker is an envelope of the below essential attributes: presentation skills, the ability to put across a point effectively. Suppose there is a meeting with a client who is ready to support in cash or kind, but on the other hand, the NGO manager or the team leader or the representative is unable to put across a point effectively, then there will not be any positive outcome, but it will lead to confusion and dismay. Counseling. Counseling for an NGO manager is very, very important because it's a method of guiding and helping others. A worker may have a personal problem which is affecting in the business or affecting in day-to-day life. So if you do the proper counseling, he or she would come out of that problem and focus on the area of achievement. Decision making based on logic and analysis of various factors. Decision making is based on the logic and analysis of various factors. Suppose in a pandemic situation like this, if some client says that we want 30 students to be placed, so one needs to go by logic and analysis of various factors. That is it possible, or can it be deferred, or will it be okay to give the appointments now and then join later? So one has to make a very practical and curative decision making. The ability to accept and handle change as it is an inevitable aspect of life. The ability to deal with ethical dilemmas, ensuring a fine balance between the mind and heart. This is a very important thing, the mind and the heart. At times when one needs to take an emotional judgment, one needs to be emotional, and when there has to be a practical judgment, one needs to take a practical judgment. The innate skill to negotiate and reach a win-win state is one of the soft skills which are required in an NGO manager. A strategic outlook and ability to view things from long-term perspectives. The NGO manager has to remain calm and composed even during the severest of the crisis. An NGO manager should have the ability to foster, develop and nurture relationships. And an NGO manager has to be institutive, a skill which can be developed through experience. And last skill is the NGO manager has to be introspective. Introspective does not mean that you just do an analysis when someone twinks at you or gives you a negative feedback and all. It should be done from day one so that you start working on your demerits on a day-to-day platform, so that at the end of the day you evolve as a complete and 360-degree personality. Now, skills to manage relationship with others. Some of these skills which include assertiveness, influencing people, working in groups and managing conflict. All these form a complex of personal attributes loosely branded as soft skills, without which hard goals should remain unattainable. So according to soft skills are key to employment today. The career opportunity newsletter which came on the October 2002, the employees would need to workplace with in the organizations or NGO with the below attributes. They have to show empathy, they have to be aware of what is going on around them, they should have work ethics, they should have manners and courtesy, that is use please, thank you, excuse me, let me help you, and dealing with customers, supervisors and peers. Exhibit positive teamwork in sharing responsibilities, have self-discipline and self-confidence, conform to prevailing norms, that is dress, grooming and vocabulary, and last but not the least, have language proficiency, that is the ability to speak, read, write business in a business context. So just wrapping up, in today's session, we read about reading skills. Reading skills, the reader has to be actively involved in the process of reading, and to comprehend the text accurately, we would require the below skills: the linguistic knowledge, the extra-linguistic knowledge, the product approach, the process approach. Then a reader reads something where he or she understands at three levels, which are reading the lines, reading between the lines, and reading beyond the lines. The techniques of reading would follow as survey, question, read, recite, and review. Active reading would be considering the author's purpose for writing, anticipating the possible message from content, use of prior knowledge, evaluating what is read. And the techniques of retention would be using of memory aids, deciding priorities of retention, thinking, reinforcing and enduring determination. And last but not the least, we dealt about the written business communication and soft skills. So at the end of the session, what sincerely comes to my mind is that until unless we put into practice, the session and the outcomes will not be fruitful. So ending up the session, and we will be coming up with much more enriching topics. And thank you listeners for your valuable time. Thank you.